Hello everyone, welcome to Lorelines. Thank you for waiting for us for our delay, and also we had a 2-week break, so we are back and ready to have some fun, which you guys will find out pretty quickly. Episode 18, the Primals, Icons, and Auspices. Who are they and what do they mean? Welcome to Lorelines.
Hello, hello, hello.
Figure we'll let everybody say hello at least.
Welcome.
Good afternoon.
Have everyone here.
Hello!
Sledge Prince, thank you. So we have a story to tell.
Oh boy.
No, we don't.
Okay. Well, anyway, the Primals. Interesting bag of worms. Started off pretty simple in A Realm Reborn. It's become quite something different now.
So, where should we start? Do we want to go ahead and start with just Ifrit, or do you think that we were made aware of one beforehand, or shall we go over the the beast tribes beforehand and then move into the primals?
So, I think... No, go ahead.
I think the only one that we really had made aware to us before Ifrit was Bahamut, and that was just because Bahamut laid waste to everything. So it was kind of like we had to talk about Bahamut first because it was like this big thing in ARR.
We technically go in order of appearance. The warring triad would be first.
Let's not go by historical order.
Yeah, let's story appearance.
I think that's the best way because the story appearance does say something about these primals as well.
I agree. I think we should start with Ifrit.
So
Wait.
let's start.
Me too, because with the end of, well, as of now, the end of 5.55, it's like we began with Ifrit and we finish with Ifrit. So it's kind of a nice parallel.
And he was a bitch.
You know, not everyone has a dragon amped up dragoon to help them out.
That's right.
So Ifrit, pet god of the Amalja?
Yep. Super happy with tempering, which would make him, as we have talked about very briefly earlier, a class 1 primal, which class 1 primals are the ones that are super temper happy.
Aggressively pursuing getting more followers and using those to expand their power and so forth.
It's been some time since ARR, but if I recall correctly, we were encountering that tribe. We had some tempered bandits who were abducting people.
Yes.
For what purpose? We were exploring, and then...
It was... Well, who was it? It was Ungar? What's his name?
Ungus.
Yes. I was close, somewhat. We met him in Olga.
In essence, we were trying to track down some pamphlets that we were worried was connected to the disappearances of crystal caravans. And so this guy was like, yeah, I can take you to help and find this, and then walked us right into a trap.
Yeah, it was totally that guy from like the level 15 quest from
Indeed.
ARR.
Yeah.
Which pamphlets were they actually spreading? I don't know if they were because Thancred comments on this is a jumble of nonsense, and I don't actually recall if he mentioned it's regarding the teachings of Azima or regarding the teachings of Naufal.
Well, they talked about that a bit, and it was supposed to be, I think, mainly Azima. Because the priest guy, that Rogadin guy that's in Drybone that we talked to, we asked him about it, and he was like, this is drivel.
Yeah,
Yeah, absolute garbage.
they were definitely combining things, mixing it all up. They just wanted, hey,
Yeah.
get rich quick, come join us. Just kidding.
Yeah. He came up with he had pamphlets that to a casual observer would look fine and be like a little bit of hope in a world of shitty outcomes, but in reality, to any trained eye, it's just crap.
So low-tier cult pamphlets.
Very much
Yeah,
so.
it's complete with Kool-Aid and comments.
What flavor
Ifrit
Kool-Aid?
Ifrit as a primal was different for the player than others because we didn't go in saying all right, we're going to defeat a primal. We got captured by a primal. It attempted to temper us, and it did not work. And that's when they were like, oh, you're of the godless blesseds number.
Not even that. It just said you have been claimed by another.
And then he said, actually,
yeah.
one of the godless blesseds.
Yeah.
And
Whatever.
if it actually mentions that the paragons warn of people tainted like that. Well, actually, if it uses the word tainted before that, but it's rather.
Yet I smell not the taint of another upon thee.
Mm-hmm.
Is what he says.
Yes, the primals actually refer to us and the between quotes blessing of light as the taint of the light.
Yes,
Yeah,
and it is a taint.
Bonk.
We were trying not to be lewd, I thought.
That was incoming. We saw it.
That was a Bonnie level inflection there.
You're right. It was Bonnie humor.
Whatever the case, that was when we discovered, hey, we're immune to this primal thing, and other people were like, hey, that's really useful. We can use this, and that's when we start fighting all the other primals and doing it on purpose.
Let's just murder everything.
To be fair, the primals are a blight upon the land, yada yada yada, draining it dry, messing people up. We don't want that. It doesn't make sense.
Also murdering everyone who they tempered. Just like
I hate that.
Kill them all. And we're the good guys, right? Shrug.
We're the good guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
Our God has permitted us.
Sarcasm.
Hey, what else would we do
humor.
without knowledge with murder humans who don't give a fuck?
Yes. Just murder them. It'll be fine.
Oh, Ifrit was summoned with the Amulja's fanatical desire to crush the forces of Ulda and reclaim their holy lands, which they feel like Ulda had stolen from them, and that was they were expanding into. And the scholars had speculated that the rampaging Ifrit and his inexhaustible wrath is this concentrated spiritual fervor made manifest.
So I reject that, just because that also is the storyline of the Hildebrand questline, where we have the line of Uhl and the line of others, people. Yes, the line of ill. And they basically are like, hey, these bitches stole our throne, and they're fucking terrible. We should get rid of them. But Julian screws it all up.
Yes.
I'm gonna have to redo those quests. I don't remember that.
With a frying pan.
That's
with a frying pan, exactly.
Perhaps a manifestation of Ralgar.
One could say that going from Ifrit to that, we've gone from fire to frying pan.
No. Julian is not
out of the
primal.
fire.
She is a force of nature, and so I don't believe she fits into this discussion fully. However, Godbert, I would argue, is a manifestation of Byrgot, and therefore may, in an extreme sense, be considered a primal of Byrgot and one of the 12.
I think he's more likely reborn, but who knows?
Yes,
I will say another note on Ifrit, actually. That's where we get the term temper. Tempering is what Ifrit does to his followers, and then they went on with like Leviathan drowning people, and then they were like, man, this is going to be too many words, screw it, we're sticking with tempered. So tempered was originally coined as specifically for the ones claimed by Ifrit, but it's just come to mean everyone.
It makes sense because technically tempering a blade, it's like it has, I think the word, forgive me for my foreigner status, but tempering a blade involves heat and fire.
Indeed.
And then cold.
No, I was going to say, I believe it's alternation, but yes.
Heat and then the quench, yeah.
But that's why they chose that word, and then it ended up becoming the general word for having your will at least partially overwritten by a primal. becoming
Either
fixed
completely
mode.
suppressed or put into overdrive. In the
That
case
umbral,
of the void.
for that umbral aspecting of the soul.
Yeah.
So I'd like to read from the book, The Origin Myth of Ifrit.
Please. I had a hard time reading that font in my copy.
It's really tiny, and it's written in a font that's
It's a flowing
kind of old.
cursive.
Yes. The creation myth of the Amalja holds that in the beginning there was only Ifrit. The world bespawned war filled with beasts bereft of reason or intellect, each fighting an endless, mindless battle for survival. But there was one race of great lizards whose ferocity so pleased the Lord of the Inferno that they bequeathed unto the flickering motes shared from his own primordial flame. The sacred fire took purchase in the lizards' souls, burning away frailty and weakness, and from the ashes of their transformation stepped the first warriors of the Amalja. 7 males and 7 females there were, and from the joining were born 7 tribes. It is told that from the tribes ranged far and wide, and ruled all that walked on or crawled upon the land, known in the present day as Zanrak, the place where Ifrit is said to have been blessed by the Amalja ancestors, for it has been a strife of enduring conflict down through the centuries. Once spelled Badia, and now Ulda, the lizard-like beastman, will make a foe of any who infringe upon the blasted territory they believe kissed by the holy flames of their gods.
No, that's obviously bullshit.
I mean,
Very interesting, though.
yeah,
It
I
is.
agree, because besides reminding me sort of their tribes reminded me of the 12 tribes of Israel. It also reminds me of the convocation because they were 14, and it's like with the beast tribes. I guess we're probably going to see this a number of times discussing the beast tribes, but it's like, does this fucking lizards have more knowledge of the truth of the world than the so-called spoken race?
It's because they have primals. I mean, look at the sylphs. They have a shitload of knowledge about the world. But, Gridania is like, hey, the elementals, who have been a thing since the 6th era.
Here's another interesting note, actually. This whole fire burning everything things makes me think of the calamity of fire. I wonder if some of the legend is based out of that.
That's what I'm thinking too, because they said that in the beginning. Well, as you know, if you've ever watched most, it's not anime, but like most shows that go back in time and tell about the origin of the world, fire is one of the most essential elements to begin a world.
I'm guilty.
Heat.
Yeah.
Speaking from a chemical and scientific perspective, heat is the catalyst of all kinds of change.
That and light.
Like in my personal,
Light gives heat.
in the personal story that I'm kind of polishing, the world building and all. Actually, the first, say, spirit that was created or born is the spirit of shadows, the spirit of darkness, and then comes her husband, that is the spirit of flames, and together they birth the spirit of light. Yeah.
Go ahead, Neela.
That was all.
Oh, okay. Would anyone else like to add to this before we move on to Garuda?
Titan before Garuda.
Oh, I guess.
Yeah.
That is true.
So, big chunk.
Big chunk. Thank you so much.
Chicken
for that.
nugget, I believe, is the technical term.
Yeah.
Are they ready to fry?
Ready to cry for what?
Mountain Busters.
I had my time in that. I'd rather not think of it again.
Would I?
Chicken tenders.
So, moving on. Titan. He is the kobold's primal of the earth. It is said that he is the indomitable will of the earth made manifest, beloved of the kobold clans. He was supposed to be compassionate and gentle. He's a father to the tunnel-dwelling worshippers. But woe betide those who fool enough to provoke this colossus, for when his anger is waked, the very earth trembles and heaves up under the unstoppable fury of the mountainous bulk.
Yeah, large and gentle, bow down over a dweller, and he tempers everyone who is in the area, including little Gabu, who did nothing wrong, and Titan is an asshole. So
But he loves his
Titan's another
children, though.
class 1 primal because he immediately tempers anyone who's around him. He can literally do no wrong. Fuck this guy. He's a mountain of poop.
His weapons suck too.
They're terrible.
I kind of like his axe and his gun, but I'm a sucker for chunky weapons.
Poop axe, poop gum. Exactly. Hie my children into the dark. He will not be denied. Although I will not argue that the reason for his summoning was entirely wrong because Limsa totally fucked the kobolds.
Yeah, there was
Supposed to take the mountains, right?
That was going to.
There's-
Go ahead, Nila.
Oh, sorry. I was just saying there was definitely some confusion, some clarity there that I'm glad we finally saw that come back in 5.4. I know a lot of people in my friend groups were like, oh, it was boring. I was like, I find this fascinating. They're finally facing the music. I was like, this is great. So I appreciate it.
Actual
came up-
real-world politics.
They went back to themes from like ARR and actually finally addressed them regarding the chord that they had with the kobolds, especially about division of land and sea.
Well, you're not wrong, Data. That is very much like a pirates to do a bullshit contract that's very
Yeah.
wiggle roomy, and then
More of a
wiggle right through it.
guidelines.
And then write it off as, well, we were just trying to survive.
Yeah. The thing is with Titan, the kobolds address not the primal but their god as Father Titan, and I find his attitude towards the Lominsons really coherent because he is like a father to the kobolds, and a father is usually in this case the father is portrayed as being the one who defends his children. And in that regard, then Titan certainly fits the bill.
I don't disagree. I think he is very much a father to the kobolds, and he very much tempers them to feel like they are children to him because they consider him to be superior to them as though a god. And so, of course, by that logic, when they summon him, he is superior to them, and so he tempers them. And I think that's one of the essential pieces of tempering.
That's going to be a thing that's relevant because we find out in Tiamat's case that she doesn't feel that same reverence toward Bahamut. So most of these primals do have the I am the god or the only god in Garuda's case complex going on, but a few of them are not quite as superior is a word that works. They're not quite as much putting themselves above, perhaps.
Yeah, and like Roxas said, bullshit contract, screwed over the kobolds. Very polite.
Everybody sucks here.
Blink Bright says, "My daddy can beat up your daddy." I love this.
You're right.
Blink
You're not
Bright
wrong.
on YouTube. I'm so glad. Thank you for saying that.
So I'm gonna go ahead and
beat up your daddy.
I'm gonna go ahead and read off of the extremely tiny and cursive writing for the origin myth. In the beginning, the world was. You didn't have to do that. I have it right in front of me.
No, this is for them.
Oh, okay. In the beginning, the world was a place of relentless hostility, cold, hard, unforgiving. The great Father Titan gazed upon this inhospitable land and saw that it was in need of custodians. Thus did he mold the ground beneath him, breathing life into soil and clay and creating the race of kobolds. But the newborn creatures were not reclaimed life to the rock of the stone, or the stone, and they could not dwell alongside the savage beasts that stalked the surface. Seeing his children's frailty, the Lord of the Crags sent magma flowing through the holy mount of Ogormo, the molten rivers leaving behind the veins of ore. Thence did he teach the kobolds the ways of mining and the secrets of smelting, and my god, they really need to fix this font.
Gird?
Gird
With
I think
armor and
Gird.
weapons?
Gird with armor and weapons of metal, and beastmen did force the beasts to flee. Greatly satisfied with the success of his guardians, Titan returned to his bed in the mountain's crater. Ere be sank beneath its boiling crust, he left the kobolds with a promise. When his children needed him most, the smoky breath of Ogormo would herald his return. God, that is so tiny and so difficult to read.
Yeah. I thought
Have a
perhaps
talk
you
with
had
Charlene about their
transcribe.
handwriting.
Nope.
Their
Now
food is bad, and their handwriting is terrible. Great.
Cobb, I'm gonna send you right now to talk with Charlene. Okay?
Oh no, don't do it.
Yeah.
We gotta wait for Cryle to help us get in before we can do that.
Cryle has never done shit for anybody.
Hey,
Except you're still
hey,
and us. She helps Xenos too.
hey,
Not on purpose though.
hey! She
Yes,
kept
Val?
she kept the squad alive. All right.
Yeah, that's fair.
Are you okay, Meowth?
Yeah.
Should we go over the the history of Triple Triad again?
No. No, I was going to say that it's actually I've heard in other cultures the sign. Well, I guess it's rather normal. The sign of a volcano about to enter eruption, like a sign of the gods. I think was something about about in a Philippines eruption or something that the tribes actually believe that their god is inside and he's mad and anything. It's kind of a staple in a sense in certain regions.
I think these types of myths exist really anywhere where a mountainous volcanic eruption may happen, or those that live indigenous near one.
Yeah, except Pompeii, because the Romans haven't.
Pompeii isn't around for them to actually say anything anymore, so
The Romans had not actually seen a fucking volcano in their lives, so that's kind of the difference.
It's true. Literally, the god Vulcan was born on Pompeii because they had no other way to explain it.
Yes.
I mean, if you go and ask a resident of Pompeii now what's life is like, they'll
answer you in
say
plaster.
literally stone and ash.
They'll just give you a stone faced look.
Hey.
Pun quote met.
I love it.
Going for death puns, like the whole team.
We care about
I'll laugh about it.
We care about people on this show, truly. Anyways, Garuda.
Who doesn't care about people?
Garuda doesn't.
Exactly. That's what I'm trying to say.
Garuda's kind of an
Garuda-
interesting case.
Yeah, Garuda cares about clout.
Garuda
She's
cares
like-
about Garuda.
She's a
She doesn't
stylish
care
death
about
Valkyrie.
clouds.
Clout.
Clout. She's a clout chaser.
Yeah, she
There
wants
you
to be
go.
like the Primal on YouTube with the best theme.
She does, though.
She's also a class 1 primal, and she has lots of feathers. Yeah, cloud chaser, cloud chaser. Exactly.
No, I was going to say she's kind of particular because the XL are not are engineer race by the Elegant. So it's
I was
kind
also
of
going to bring that up.
Yeah, the XL are absolutely an engineered race by the Algon. They do not exist on anywhere but the source.
Yeah, which is why you'll notice you never see them on the first, even though you do see the other beast tribes, which indicates pretty strongly that those beast tribes were indeed around at the time of the Sundering.
Yes.
But they
In addition, except for the Amaro, which were not. They were developed by the Ronkins.
yeah, the Amaro were created by the Ronkans, is true.
You're making me think that the Amro and the Ixal have a common ancestor.
No, the Amaro and the God, what are they called? The aspects.
They have a similar.
Auspices. The
behavior.
Auspices and the Amaro have a similar ancestry.
So, I don't know if I can keep reading these myths because they are so tiny
I'll
and
try.
so difficult.
If you
give
can
it a
zoom in
shot.
a little, I can give it a try, or you can.
Go ahead.
So, first of all, Garuda, the Ixal, I found her interesting because she's so, well, they say it right here in the chat. I mean, Garuda is the name given to the terrible goddess of the Ixal, though supremely elegant in both form and movement, this bloodthirsty deity and her merciless whims inspire fear even amongst her most devoted worshippers. Capricious in the extreme, the gentle breeze that surrounds her can sweep forth in a tempestuous gale at the slightest provocation. The Ixal are kind of operating in a reconquest self-defense mode, and despite being pretty vicious and like I'm gonna kill you vibes, they're not nearly as ferocious as Garuda is when she spawns up. I always found that that difference between the tribe and the deity to be kind of striking.
I agree, and I attribute that to us building only one airship for the Ixali to find Azazla and discover that their entire creation myth, not cremation myth, creation myth is a lie.
It's pretty depressing.
It didn't actually. That actually didn't.
It's half true.
They at least the tribe we are dealing with the crafter quest, they actually, I think the chieftain wasn't actually really impressed with that. He just wanted to build a big ass airship and fly even. I think I recall something about fly even higher than their creators actually ever did, something like that. Which, I mean, it's fair. They wanted to go beyond Azizla in a sense, and become their own race. And in their case, I can understand because they are they they are pretty much the Final Fantasy XIV version of Mewtwo.
Going back
Wow.
to this, Garuda's aspect is wind. We fight her actually in almost like a vortex of wind, and she continues to summon tornadoes and vortexes within the vortex. She uses her plumes, her feathers rather, for attacks. She is the Ixal primal. And oh gosh, she was summoned in response to, what was she summoned in response to? Was it for us? Was it because of us?
I don't believe so.
I'm pretty sure it was another example of the Ixal bringing her out to fight the Gridanians specifically.
It's kind of strange because technically the Ixal they live in their homeland in a sense is Shelfatol, and they surround, but their base is in Natalan, and that's actually Kurthas.
Yeah,
So I don't
very
actually,
cold.
I don't actually exactly know what their beef is with the grid. Yes, I know, because they were cutting trees to fortify Natalan, and the elementals didn't like that.
They wanted
Yes.
to build airships to go back to the sky to find their heavenly homeland, essentially.
The untempered, the beast tribe ones we work with definitely have that goal. The other ones are more warlike, as I recall. And there's definitely a we can raise the forest and then the elementals won't bother us anymore kind of thing going on.
No, the thing with the conflict with the Gridania actually comes with actually came with the Ixo cutting trees because they were building their homes at Solfatmal and Natalan, and you know how Gridania is like when it comes to trees.
Well, I believe if the elementals get mad enough, then everybody has to leave. So of course they're trying to enforce it.
Yes.
The green wrath is not pretty.
No, it is not. Moving on to Leviathan.
Real quick,
Leviathan.
before
Go ahead,
we do
Neil.
that, I'm sorry. I thought we were going to read the origin myth, so I was waiting to say something.
Oh, okay. Okay,
We
yeah,
are.
go ahead.
I just wanted to do a little bit of dialogue beforehand.
Yes.
Would you like to read it?
Moving back, Garuda. You two, whichever one.
Unless you want me.
Legend has it that the birdmen of the Ixal once lived in a floating continent known as Avalion, where they protected
It's difficult, isn't it?
the farthest reaches of the heavens. This is so hard.
Garuda's. I don't know whether.
Yeah, we need one reader, please.
I can't.
As Garuda's divine soldiers. A time came, however, when the evil that saturated the land below began to reach upward and infect the skies above. Excuse me? Sorry, that's very final days. Moving on. Thence did Garuda order her minions to descend and cleanse the ground of this vile I'm not sure what that is.
Influence.
Influence, thank you. Bidding them to remain there as the guardians, that the heavens may never again be thus threatened. To this day, the Ixal have dwelled upon the land, dreaming of an end to their sacred duty and a return to their loft paradise in the clouds. Even as the myth is kept alive within the new Flightless tribe. Thank you. Trying to read that. Something have discovered the resonate. I can't read that word. Sorry.
Recording.
The recording devices of ancient Alag that describe the Ixalian, sorry, a chimeric race that was created on Azizla to
serve.
To serve and. Do you want to read it, Mel?
In the intriguingly named Garuda Airborne Division, according to these records, the division were led by a female elegant general, and it was by her. What the fuck was that?
Her order that the
Ixalian were deployed across the empire to crush what?
A string of uprisings.
A string of uprisings. The
commonalities.
Commonalities between Ixalian, and I don't read that because Cope's avatar is on the way.
Historical fact and mythical imagery.
Mythical imagery are difficult to ignore and are subject of great blah 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 blah. Cope's hair and
interest to scholars who study the heart. Who study the beast tribes.
The beast.
That's a tough one.
That's
Thank
a fun.
You know, when the thing
that is fun.
You know, the thing is with you said the final days, Nila. I recall the tale of the sailor about the tainted land that was Azizla, and that the outlander tore from the burn. I mean, you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes sense because it makes sense that they would have a myth that that relates to something that happened in historically in the Elgan Empire. because they come from there,
Indeed.
made by them.
I also, the thing I'd wanted to mention when I dragged us back here was that all the beast tribes have a visible difference between the tempered / enemy mob and the ones that we work with on the beast tribes. Like for the Amalja, it's like red trappings versus blue on their armor. They're the sons of Ash or whatever. The
Brotherhood of Ash.
yes. The Vath versus the Nath, it's like green versus orange things. And the thing with the Ixal, most Ixal are very very dull colored wings, and the ones we do work with in the Beast Tribe quests have very bright plumage. It's very startling to me that that's the difference.
And it brings to mind Owen talking about how tempering and the way that the aether changes in an individual who's been tempered, it changes the physicality over time and the ethereal balance of the individual underneath, like beyond what you can visibly see. You almost get the sense that they're subtly hinting at that with things like that, even with just like simple things like feather changes in their color.
Yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about that to connect it with it. That makes a lot of sense.
Looks like like in the scale of, in terms of color, then untempered tribes tend to go more the high specter colors, except the sylphs. The sylphs are the exception because they're violet, and violet is the
highest energy color.
Yeah, the highest energy color. But I guess it makes sense because Ramu is the primal of lightning. So.
Blink
But
Bright on YouTube
overall,
says,
you could say that some of the tempered individuals, they become kind of wash over. The color is kind of wash over, which makes sense because it's when we reach, Shadowbringers, the umbral polarity is kind of like a bleach.
Like it leaves things white or paled out. Yes.
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 Shall we move on to Leviathan now?
just a moment.
I think Feo had something.
Yeah, Blink Bright on YouTube says it'll be funny if the flying islands revealed an Endwalker might be Ayatlan.
I was thinking that as well. We see at least that one floating area, and I was like, I don't know if that would be Ayatlan
Maybe.
or if not.
I think that perhaps it's more like it has more probability that the Ixal's homeland is in the Sea of Clouds, because we only explore like a tiny part of that, but we don't know. I don't know.
I would be interested to find out.
Yes.
I'm saying that the Iskelion are chimerical creation. I'm wondering if they have any true homeland or if they were completely lab grown. I'm not sure how much that means chimerical, like what they mix, if they just slapped wings on an existing thing or what.
I'm pretty sure that according to Fractal Continuum Hard, that they were an original creation of the Elegans, and so they were just homegrown, so they don't really have a home of their own.
Kind of tragic.
Sad.
All right.
But it made for a very impactful quest line.
Although the implication of chimerical at all is a combination of traits and possibly creatures.
Exactly. It's hard to know, well, did they combine like 18 different things to make something basically original? Did they just mash two things together? We just to my knowledge, we don't know yet.
We first, in the strict meaning of mixing things together as a form of creation, the ancients did that, but to them it was natural. You remember the Amortine guy that accidentally made the first griffin?
Indeed.
So, but for them it was like, oh yeah, okay, I mix an eagle with a lion, and turn out like this, but the creature is fine. So yeah.
OBS. What's
The
that?
OBS is being rude.
Yeah.
No, it's fine. I'm trying to get Restream to work so that we can chat with each community.
That would be ideal.
It's been down the whole time I've been working on it. No, it still won't show up. My sincerest apologies, guys. It worked before. It's not my fault.
That's fine. Now on to Leviathan, Lord of the Whirl. Lord of all waters, revered.
Temper happy water guy.
Oh, that's not his name.
His name is Temper Happy Danger Water Noodle.
Yes, that. Temper happy danger water noodle.
Lurking in the lightless depths, Leviathan devours all that crosses his path. The Sahagin called on the Lord of the Whirl when their spawning grounds were destroyed by the calamity, praying for Leviathan's floods to cleanse the lands of western Linosia and create a new haven for their offspring. They summoned Leviathan, I think, on other terms, because I believe I remember their leader. I think it was I can't even pronounce his name. It was the guy. It was the guy with the giant head. He was sacrificed, or he was given to Leviathan in exchange. He thought he was going to gain eternal life, and so he thought by sacrificing himself he would be immortal. Instead, he became the catalyst for summoning Leviathan.
So, not quite. Leviathan was already summoned at that point. But basically what happened was he died and thought he was immortal, and so he couldn't be killed.
This was the
Leviathan ate him.
Leviathan. Sorry, the Sahagin priest.
Yep,
Yes.
that's who
If I recall, he got capped by Merlib.
He got shot by Merlib, hopped into a new body. She shot all the bodies, and he floated there as a soul bob, like, "Ha, you can't kill me now." And the Leviathan was like, "That looks tasty." Yep. It's sort of it was the thing that cued us into that a soul outside of a body is vulnerable.
Yeah, thank you for reminding me of that. No, it also cued us into the fact that the beast tribes at this point said called the beast tribes, and we being markedly kind of remarked that we are the spoken races, and then it turns out that the beast tribes can also have the echo.
Because it was actually really interesting, because then they started talking about like like you said, it showed that the soul can exist outside the body through other means, and it clued us into how the Ascian souls work as well. But as for Leviathan, he was summoned not to in this case in the game. He wasn't just summoned to cleanse the lands of Western Linosia. He was summoned in response to Merlweb and the others, and Linosia's intervention in their summoning. And we built that whole raft in response to that, and then went out and killed him. I believe is what it was.
Yes. That was the sequence of events.
So, should we try and read the origin myth, or is that a lost cause?
I think we should try, and we should keep trying, but it is difficult.
Zoom in on it.
I'm as zoomed in as I can be.
I can zoom in closer, but
I can give it a try.
In the tales.
Go ahead, Neela.
In the tales passed down from Clutch's father to Spawn, it is told that all was once a parched wasteland devoid of ocean or sea. The gods saw how the stars' denizens did thirst, and thus entreated Leviathan to cover the world with water. The Lord of the Whirl answered, laboring to bring forth mighty floods.
What?
That sounds kind of like the 6th a little. But even as the
Bellows?
I don't think it's Bellows.
Uh,
Follows.
The hollows of the land filled
Oh.
up with
Seas.
seas, so were the last
Drops.
drops of his essence drained away. Oh, sad face. When they beheld their dying savior, the newly invigorated ocean dwellers despaired at his fate, and at the cost of their own lives. Give me a second. Sometimes it takes a second.
Yeah.
At the cost of their own lives, sought to stem his ebbing vitality. His strength thus restored, Leviathan. That's very blurry.
Mourning.
Mourning the sea creatures that had perished in his name, bestowed a divine boon upon those that remained. Certain of the fish, it's not fish, it's fish endowment, underwent a transformation. That makes sense. Gaining arms and legs and the gift of higher reason. Leviathan named these chosen few Sahagin and warned that the blessing of limbs carried with it a price. Ever after must they return to the land to lay their eggs. Then did the deity unleash upon an island a crashing tidal wave, scouring away the unclean soil, and preparing for his children there's something spawning ground.
Sacred
Spawning grounds. Thank you. The Leviathan soon vanished into the murky depths to go eat everything, apparently. The Sahagin have ever since shown their gratitude with yearly offerings of sacrifice. Wow. Interesting. So those are the spawning grounds that then got destroyed in the 7th calamity, forcing them to come up on the shore and come into conflict with the Limitzins.
Seems like a retelling of the stories of Hydaelyn and Zodiac to me.
Every time I hear about the gods having to deal with something being dead and them bringing about a primal initially to like solve that problem, I keep coming back to thinking about Zodiac and how potentially also that Leviathan could potentially be an ancient creation initially that later on was gifted to the Sahagin, and this was the myth that was born out of that to explain it, but it's a dim memory of after the final days, the ancients are trying to use primals potentially to bring life back to the star because it was still suffering, it was still barren.
It's very interesting that these all come from the world was lacking an element and was also like messed up. Hey, nice, we got chat fixed.
Yeah. It also brings to mind.
It's like when I keep picturing my mind, let's say, pinpoint the moment with Hythlodeus describes the land as the waters were blighted, the winds had ceased to blow, the earth was rotting like in Final Fantasy 1, and all these myths may spawn from this point, when at Zodiarc's revitalization of the land that came at the cost of the second sacrifice.
That makes a lot of sense too. There's definitely sort of an myth, an underlying myth that's split off into, well, here's our piece of this myth, here's our piece of this myth that you get the feeling of.
Oh, the sylphs.
Yes, the sylphs, and going down to Ramu now. So Ramu is a super interesting one because there's some dialogue in game that he shares with us that is one of the first inklings to how old he is and what exactly it kind of gives us a glimpse into what we are. Who we are.
More time. He takes a lot more time to talk to us and is a lot more passive, a lot more like defensive. He's not as active. He doesn't want to like go around tempering a bunch of people so much as just preserve the forest and the sylphs that he has with him.
Sludge says,
I actually want to read off what he said in 2 of his screenshots. I actually have them pulled up here.
Awesome. You want me to put it up?
Trace the servant of Hydaelyn.
Whence does sprung this calamitous seed? In the beginning, no such duality existed. Were light and dark given form when man was born? Thou standeth apart from thy kin. Thou art the bringer of light, aye, but there is something more in thee. Those two screenshots that I pulled from, those are actually in game.
Can we
And
check the grandpa for answers?
he actually mentions that he was in the beginning, no such duality existed. On that screenshot, that kind of implies how old he is. Like he was one of the first to pop up.
He either has full foreknowledge or is remembering, and it's very interesting either way.
And in the second one, thou standeth apart from thy kin. Thou art the bringer of light, aye, confirming that we are the blessed. But there is something more in thee. You can't quite picture or see what we are, who we are, but he notices, he acknowledges that there is something, that we are someone else. So, who wants to start?
Now I'm picturing what in one of these things, speculating on how old Ramu is, being one of Lahabra's creation, and Asem actually took Ramu for for something.
Punch him in the beard.
Yeah, well, brought him out for a spin, had him help us with something.
Punch him in his giant beard.
The thing with Ramu is that he's more like a passive primal that doesn't temper anyone. The people that come in his sides. It's implied by the sylphs of Little Solas that the sylphs that are tempered in Large Skull they are tempered because first they summon Ramu out of fear, because when I don't know if it was the Autumn War or it was when the Guardians began
It was the
building
Guardians.
Belsar's. So it was Belsar's wool. Okay, so the sylphs actually feared the strangers coming into the forest, and they summons Ramu, and the side effect was that those who summoned Ramu got tempered, and in response, they are the ones who try to get the others tempered to kind of bring the sylphs together again. That's how the sylphs explain it in Realm Reborn. So yeah, it's actually not Ramu doing the tampering, but kind of more like his followers who got tempered by accident. So yeah.
There's also part of the 1.0 quest line actually involved that incursion and like the growing fear of the sylphs, and I can't quite recall everything, but suffice it to say it was back during the period where the map was a convoluted nightmare maze, very dark, and had that old song, and so you really got a feel for kind of how much of a secret grove the Sylphlands were, whereas now you can just kind of cross a bridge and walk into it. So yeah, they were playing defense there, and I think that's reflected in Ramu's demeanor as well as possibly it just being his innate demeanor.
Blank, that's an interesting theory, but he is actually he could have been as old as when the star was actually sundered. So he could have had knowledge that the star was sundered and the Heidelin and Zodiarch existed and fought, or he existed before then and was one of the first creations. So it's one of the two. But you could be right.
We'll go into that a bit with the myth.
Yes.
If you want to check if Rita, it was taken from World of Final Fantasy.
Very good. Let me look for it. I'll put it up.
I'd say the way it may or may not actually be directly relevant appearance-wise, since it is a different game. It's possible, though.
But
It's also
it's kind of if you kind of the closest thing we have.
It is.
well, yes, exactly.
Well,
You might
it's
say
cute.
it's the only thing we have. It's
All I
also
have is
very
the-
interesting. Oh, sorry.
All I have is
Okay.
the illustration.
Okay.
It's also very probable that Ron.
You cut off.
Cut.
On.
The middle of that all cut out.
Sorry, it was also very probable that Ramu was summoned with the intent that he knew what was going on as far as the beginning and the original summoning of the world.
Yeah, there's definitely something very unusual to him going on with him as far as primals go. I believe they even said as much in an interview. I don't recall exactly the source on that one though.
Well, it's just that he recognizes us as the quote unquote bringer of light. So he
And the-
acknowledges that we are her chosen.
And then he
But-
also says, "Oh, sorry."
But he also acknowledges that we are someone more than just a champion of Heidelin. There is something more in us. There is a second identity. Go ahead, Neil.
I'll comment on Ifrit briefly. It mostly just looks like an angry person, whereas the Ifrit we have in game is very much like twisted, demony.
It's Blaziken.
It's very, very, very humanoid. It actually reminds me of a more anime version of Raktapaxa, to be honest.
That's a good point. Yeah, it really does look kind of Raktapaxa.
Yeah, I was gonna say that. I was.
Rock the pasta, guys.
To be fair, the Amal just summon Ifrit in that kind of lizard form because probably they are lizards and Ifrit kind of stems from them. But when we tried to summon Ifrit, I don't know what the fuck the Warrior of Light was actually thinking, but it got me after a while. I recall going like, maybe our inner Assam is drawing upon Ifrita to create this very different Ifrit.
Let's go over the origin myth.
I'll go ahead and read the origin myth. Many races believe that their own people were the first sentient beings to come into existence, but the sylphs make no such claim. On the contrary, the creation myth of the diminutive woodland folk hold the creation myths of the diminutive woodland folk hold that the world of man was long in evidence ere the race of sylphs emerged. Their tales speak of men as greedy, thoughtless creatures who brought destruction to the forest with axe and torch. Unable to flee from the bite of steel or the lick of flame, the root-bound trees had no recourse but to beseech the gods for succor. Also interesting because we find more tree people later.
Yep.
It was Ramu, a deity of man, who heard their agonized pleas, and I think thence something his levin balls to strike budding fruits from ancient branches, born of lightning and blessed with
Secrets.
secrets. The sylphs awoke from charred husks to. It's getting very hard to see.
Serve.
Serve as the
Forest
Forest
disappear.
protector. We can't probably move the box.
I'm going to
up, can we?
disappear our chibis for a second.
Or that works too. Yeah, as the forest protectors. Ever since have their kind dwelled beneath the Black Shroud's canopy, defending their domain with the arcane wisdom bestowed upon them by the Lord of Levin himself.
Deity of man.
Very interesting.
Huh.
Ha!
Huh.
Ha!
So not deity of sylphs.
Indeed.
Huh.
So it has come
It
to be
just-
revered by them, obviously.
They just keep referring to like there being some kind of outside god or man or something that brings these into being initially, and then they're adopted by things that they either create or have a hand in helping.
Well, if you think about it, when the world was sundered, all the souls that were sundered along with it would have been shuffled. So all of those souls could have become souls of technically man because they could have considered themselves man at that time, even if they weren't Amarosians or Beastmen or whatever the hell they call themselves at that point.
What's also interesting to me is a lot of these remind me of the ancients in creating things. You know, the ancients created these vegetables we see in the words of Halmerud that now run around free in our
Well-
world. So
Yep.
obviously,
Well, that's
some of
just
these things
your
are capable of
opinion.
continuing to reproduce and exist on their own without, you know. So in essence, that is their god, their creator, is an ancient.
That is a very interesting revelation. Extremely interesting. So, who wants to move on to the best primal of them all?
Real quick.
We're not ready for Ravana yet. Then we're up for Shiva.
I'm not talking
Shiva
about
is the
that.
best primal of them all.
I'm not talking about
Get out
that
of here.
one.
Oh no, you're talking about Good King Mogamog, aren't you?
Yes.
Real
Good
quick.
game
I just
of
got a really
God,
dark thought when you were talking
The
about
original
Halmerud.
class 1 primal.
Hold on. Sal, go ahead.
Yeah, I just got a really dark thought when you were discussing Halmerud and the sylphs and, like, well, sentient smoking devices?
Smoking cabbage.
Well, considering that Halmerud is the arbiter and removes someone's arbiters in his battle, I have some thoughts.
Yes, yes, because Ramu is often considered this kind of arbiter. I was going to say judge, but yeah, arbiter is the one who passes the sentence. I mean, his ultimate attack has been always the how is it called?
Judgment.
Bolt.
Yeah, judgment bolt. I'm sorry for my memory. So yeah, it's kind of.
That's okay.
But I'm not going to bonk myself.
I'll bonk you.
I mean, if you want to check a snake's cloaca, I mean, fine, fine.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'll look up Lakshmi's skirt.
It's for science.
I prefer her bosom. No, you know.
I mean, rest your
bonk.
weary soul upon her bosom. She pretty much asks you to. So.
Sorry, what were we talking about?
Good King Mogamog, the
Jeez.
12th.
May his reign be eternal.
May his reign not be eternal.
No,
So who loves this fight just as much as me?
nobody.
Not even a little bit.
No.
I enjoy it. It's fun.
Recently
But-
with my partner who still new to the game, and she hated having to kill all the Moogles.
But come on
in
out and
ARR.
meet his trusty
It's
crew.
okay. They come
No,
back.
honestly, in ARR, I hated having to kill the Moogles. After Heaven's Word, I delighted in it. And I was like, fuck all of these Moogles. I'm going to kill them all. Fuck all y'all.
Unfortunately, they come right back. But you know.
No, it's better because they come back so I can kill them again.
Wow. A true serial killer.
You're not wrong.
I don't want to ask,
Keep
do you
going,
take the
though.
dagger, do you take the sword, or you take the gun?
Oh, the dagger, because I like to be up close and twist it.
I also find it interesting that they summon Good King Mogamog as a very large Moogle, and I just assumed, oh, you know, blown up in memory. And then we get up to the Sea of Clouds, and there's a Moogle king, and he's big, and I'm like,
Moglin's actually that big. It's realistic.
Moglin, yeah.
Yeah, Moglin.
that guy.
So, Moogles were actually around since the very beginning. They've known about the Calamity of Wind. They are our only sources of information on the first calamity.
How unfortunate.
Yes.
It's also all hearsay and
Sh-
background information. But how
Oh
unfortunate.
my god.
Like a fan Daniel.
You know, I actually feel realized because repeating Nabs's line, being a Scorpio myself, it feels like right.
No, the best is I am Fan Daniel. How unfortunate.
Unfortunate.
Oh, let's go over why he was summoned. Why he was summoned in the first place. Why did we have to intervene with the Mughals?
I don't actually remember that one because
They
Something made the Mogsguard afraid, and they were worried they weren't
were-
going to be able to protect this forest. But I don't
I
remember
do-
what the something was.
I think the
figured-
something was mainly that they saw what we did to Garuda and to remove, or actually we didn't do anything to remove by that point.
no,
There was
No,
some
we
kind
had-
of like they looked at what people were doing around them. I think specifically like us, and they were afraid that
Yeah, and
something like that would happen.
basically they wanted to go home.
Yeah,
They wanted to say, where did we originally come from? And here's our myth of how we got where we are, but we wanted to go back to where we were in our
it'll
promised
be safer there.
homeland. So
Now
let's
I
summon a primal to go back there.
Now I remember they summoned King Mughal. Well, the king. They summoned him because they were scared that Gridania's victories may a conflict of power because the warrior of light that's us defeated Gaius and the ultimate weapon in the Praetorium. So it was a moment in which the grand companies were all feeling really pleased with themselves. So the Mughals felt threatened, and that's why they summoned him.
Yet again, the threat of power causing other people to summon more primals to protect them. The cycle continues.
Go ahead and let's read from the origin myth. Whoever wants to do it. If no
Do
one,
we want to
I'll-
read the top portion? Or do we not want to worry about that? I'll read it really quickly. You got
Go ahead. No, please.
Depicted in legends as the last king of Mughal-kind, the story of good King Mogul Mog XII tells of how he helped his people flee to the world below while he alone remained in the heavens. Long believed to be the invention of fairy tales, his all-too-real manifestation in answer to the fervent prayers of the Moggulsguard sent ripples of confusion through the halls of academia. In the face of such undeniable evidence, however, good King Mogul Mog XII, may his royal appetite for either lead us not into oblivion, became the first recorded case of a non-deific entity summoned in the manner of a primal. That's right, that's something they found a very interesting and for reasonable reason, I believe. Origin myth. The mythology of the Mughals holds that in the Age of Gods, their ancestors dwelled peacefully in the heavens above. Until, that is, an incident involving something spilled cup of wine escalated into a full-scale war.
there you go.
A
The vault.
A divinity's spilled cup of wine escalated into a full-scale war. Hey, I'd go to war over that too, I understand.
Yep.
The vault of the sky, shuddering from the fury of the deific free-for-all. This sounds like the final day. Struck by an
Errant.
errant goblet from an angrily flipped feast table, good King Mogul Mog XII was heard to mutter, "These gods must be crazy, Kupo," before resolving to lead his people to the relative safety of the world below. The difference between the heavens and the ground was so great, however, that the Mughals and their tiny wings risked exhaustion. It's all good. Risked exhaustion ere they ever reached the surface. Thus did the wise and benevolent potentiate lower a miraculously long rope from the clouds, holding fast to one end while his subjects clambered down at a more manageable pace. A solution that ultimately granted the Mughals salvation, but stranded their ruler up above. Once over the generations since, the Mughals have refused to appoint a new king, intent in their belief that good King Amalgamon XII, may his noble sacrifice never be forgotten, will one day return to lead his people.
You
And
know
it's very
what?
likely that chain was unbroken in the Sea of Clouds.
It's also interesting to me because this seems a little closer to the Tiamat Bahamut thing. They weren't quite buddy-buddy, but it was not a god but a king, which may affect why the Mogsguard wasn't super tempered, because I don't believe we ever totally eradicated them. We were just like, for real this time, don't summon him again.
That's right.
You know what actually reminds me of the good king remaining above and stranded in sacrifice for his people. kind of reminds me both of. I mean, it reminds me a lot of Zodiac.
Zodiac and Olympus. That's what my first thought was.
Yeah, because
You bring up a very good point.
yeah, it's like he remains above for so his people can be saved from heavenly wrath. And the I'm if we're going by parallels, the king, the Mughal king being struck by like a cup of wine and say bitches be crazy. It's like Heidelin's dive kick, but totally such a
It's a very humorous take on a very serious subject matter, and I appreciate that. And incidentally, obviously, some of them remained behind because there was not just King Moglen up there, but plenty of other Mughals. However, it would seem that a large, or at least a significant amount of the population did indeed go down.
yeah. Yeah, but yeah, it's really interesting to the thing. I would say it's hardly a coincidence though, because King Muggle was the first primal, the first trial we had, not counting not counting coils, the first primal we encounter after the Zodiac vision. So I would draw a parallel there. If you're playing a Realm Reborn, to you end 2.0 MSQ, you witness the whole thing, and the next thing you do, aside from moving to the Awakened Suns, to the Rising Suns and stuff, and then you have to go deal with King Morgan mode. In terms of narrative, it kind of makes sense,
That's true.
Yeah.
So, Muggles, yeah, great, but let's move on.
Let's move on, Kupo.
I think Meowth is gonna like this next one.
Ooh, is it my favorite boy, Alex?
Clink clank.
He's so badass. I love him. My favorite summon of full Final Fantasy.
But who likes alternative timelines?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to say I like them, because they were a fucking mess. But as a die-hard fan of the Final Fantasy 13 trilogy, I like that.
13 is nothing. You should talk about Fire Emblem.
Oh,
Yeah, well, fair, that too. Oh,
That is a convoluted mess.
Ooh. Indeed, but I am speaking from what I know in this context, not Fire Emblem. But I do
time
agree.
travel's so fun.
I just want to.
If we're going to speak Fire Emblem, Mayumi, how about the shard's time dilation in Fire Emblem Fates?
Fates and Awakening, and yeah, we'll go over. Yeah, what's up, Owain? I mean, God, I don't feel like going into that. We're done with that. We're done. It was confusing at first, and I had to replay the map 6 times to get it.
I'm just admiring this art.
Going into actual talk about it. Rising without warning from the waters of the Thaliac River, this mechanical fortress is a result of Illuminati fusing the ruins of a Charlian defense facility with the essence of a primal. Aside from its main trunk, the colossal construct rests its 2 massive arms of steel, giving it the appearance of a clockwork giant. Events suggest.
I mean, it looks like an ant if you know the minion.
Events suggest that Alexander is capable of manipulating the flow of time, allowing its controllers to correct mistakes in history. But without further investigation, there is much about the primal that remains unexplained. For people that actually played the story, there's a bunch of hints and suggestive things in the Alexander storyline. If you look close enough.
Wait. A moment. I just realized something.
Yes.
So, Alexander was a Charlian facility that the utopia that the Charlians wanted to build. I mean that
It was a
the
Charlian.
Illuminati
And the
was
Charlian Defense Facility.
was the Charlian defense facility, and then the Enigma code used to operate Alexander, like I pointed, has ancient script.
I'm not convinced that's ancient script. I'm not sure we've seen ancient script. The stuff you're pointing out
Well,
looked more like the stuff from Omega, actually.
The same script we see
In Omega.
Eden. No, I was saying.
We see the Omega script in Eden, yes, but that's not ancient script. We see ancient script in Academia. In Anamnesis Antidote.
You sure?
But it's completely different. I'm quite sure. Yeah, I've studied that. There's a lot of things from previous fights in Eden, and that Omega script from O12 and O12S is one of them.
I'm not sure that if you're referring to the.
We can look at it later.
Yeah.
The square ones, yes. We've talked about. I've heard you call them that before and been confused. I'll read the origin myth.
Go for it.
Unlike the majority of beastmen deities, Alexander is not the creation of any specific myth or faith. It would be more accurate to describe the Citadel as the primal manifestation of the ideals of Quick Think's all thoughts, an incarnation of his vision for the perfect world. The Illuminati leader found the core of his concept in the Enigma Codex, a 100-year-old. This is really a 100-year-old work. 100? That doesn't seem right. A much older than 100-year-old work containing the revelations of a genius Ari technologist. I can't remember. His mind inexorably drawn to the plane for a
self-sustaining.
The plans for a self-sustaining mobile bastion of reason and logic. Considering Quick Think's calculating nature,
it's assumed.
It is.
It is assumed that primal. Wow, it's very blurry. I'm sorry. The primal something.
Summoning
was merely the most efficacious method of realizing his Alexander initiative. So he was just using primals, a primal, as a tool, essentially. Of course, it never really works out that way, does it?
Never does, no matter who you are.
Alexander had all the thoughts.
Well, it's actually very interesting because for those who may not have understood the storyline, which I definitely needed it explained to me to really get it, it's understandably so. He calculated all the possible realities and was like, yeah, my existence is a detriment. I'm going to take myself out of existence, creates a closed time loop, and locks himself away with the help of Mead and the other guy whose name I can never remember.
So he's Doctor Strange.
Essentially.
And Diane.
Diane, thank you. And another note from that quest is that's the one where he predicts that the fate of all the world is going to rest in the hands of a single hero, and then it shows your character. I think we're coming up on that Walker.
Yeah, we actually, in the final fight, we actually prevent our own demise in the past.
It's fantastic. It's absolutely wonderful. When I did that, I was just like, dude.
There's also Shinoma, the cat, the familiar that Alexander uses.
It's a construct.
Yeah, it's a construct that he uses to play both our side and Quick Things.
What easier tool than an adorable cat?
It was highly effective. Knocked the book out at the right time, you know?
Yeah.
Yes. But I find really, aside from the thing that Alexander was calculating possibilities and so, well, I am the problem. I'm going to see myself out. that's something I have been speculating for Endwalker regarding Zodiar's attitude, because he may realize that his existence perhaps is a threat to the world, and he may actually take the Alexander stance.
Wouldn't that be an interesting turn on its head sort of thing for the audience? At least for people who aren't necessarily
Actually paying
expecting.
attention to his characterization.
Yes.
Hmm.
They could do a number of things with Zodiac, and I think that might be one of them.
Yes.
Because Zodiac in the 12 in the Evilist Alliance games, he has never been shown to be a belligerent entity. He's pretty much chilling, trapped. I mean, he's sealed away by the Curia in 12, but in Tactics, when he's secondly freed, he's just chilling in Midlight Deep. So,
All right. So, shall we move on?
yeah.
Why
I
not?
approve.
Defeat hope with depression? Yes.
I mean, it is the natural counter, is it not? We were
Oh.
coming back to Shiva at some point, right?
Oh yes.
Excellent.
Wait,
I
did we
just didn't
miss
know
her?
what ordering we were looking at. Yeah, we haven't
This
seen Shiva
book
yet.
is in a strange order.
Yes.
Yeah, I was noticing that.
So
That's
yeah, we will get to her actually within the next pages. Actually, we're moving
Yeah.
on to Bismarck now.
Yep. Time for the Vanu Vanu.
Oh, the Vanu.
Bismarck.
And I think it's built that way because Heaven's Ward, you met Shiva in A Realm Reborn, but Isael's tale didn't end until the end of Heaven's Ward. So, who wants a crack at the giant whip?
It's not a
Bismarck.
kraken, it's a whale.
Long thought to be little more than a myth, the Lord of the Mists was summoned forth and given form by the fervent prayers of the Vanu Vanu, who worship him as the god that led their ancestors to their island home. With a flood blast of water from its great blowhole, the great white whale purges the skies of those
Yep.
who would do his followers harm. Bismarck's primal incarnation, however, has been tainted by the cruel avarice of his Vundu summoners, the entity's uncontrolled appetite leading him to devour the very islands he was intended to protect. Real Bismarck, fakey Bismarck.
Gonna take a moment here and point out that this could be in some ways an echo of Zodiac. He's supposed to save people, but unfortunately he has to take their life energies in order to save the planet.
This is another interesting example of a primal that seems to pre-exist, exist before the Sundering, right? Because of Bismarck as a Fae existing on the
Indeed.
first.
It actually makes you wonder what the Fae are exactly in this context. I mean, in Final Fantasy XIV context.
It is curious. They, as we know from the Beast Tribe quests, have power over dreams.
Hmm.
And, of course, you know, the Fae March is a Final Fantasy IV thing, Land of Summoned Beasts. And we also know that the Fae aren't a race exactly, but kind of a class of being. You know, we have multiple types of Fae. So
yeah,
it's all
but
very
they
curious.
they actually seem to be at least two of them, the Pixies and the Fuath, seem to be born of souls.
Yes,
The Pixies
certainly.
from children's souls, and the Fuath from the souls of the drowned. So there's something going on with the Fae and that.
Even if we have to wait 2 expansions, I want this loop closed really badly. I'm very
Yes.
curious.
All right,
Well,
I'll read.
The
Yeah,
Fae
go
they-
ahead.
I'll read the origin myth real quick.
Go for it.
Long, long ago, in a time when not a single cloud marred the blue vastness of the sky, a stark white calf was born to a pod of sea-dwelling whales. The pale, skin? Something meaning skin, I'm sure.
Dude.
Hued Bismarck endured endless cruelty from his gray-skinned siblings until one day they suffered the abomination to live no more. It is said that the gods wept at his piteous fate, and when his tortured soul ascended to the heavens, they returned the white whale to life. His rebirth blessed by divine grace, Bismarck swam through the air, the whale's breath begetting billowing clouds until the sky was filled with a sea of tranquil mist. Master and creator of this peaceful domain, he thence became known as the Lord of the Mists. Compassionate and gentle, Bismarck raised entire islands into the heavens to provide sanctuary for those who had suffered similar torments. The Vanu Vanu marked this ascension in their history as the moment when the Sea of Clouds became their home.
It's actually really interesting.
It's especially interesting because it's so different from the summoned version that we see.
Lord Mawkish says, OMG, it is the story of the ugly duckling.
It really kind of is.
Yeah.
Yes, but at the
You're
same
right.
time, reminds me of being cast out and revived. Kind of like a story of a phoenix in a sense, and at the same time.
Also, from the scientific perspective, albino animals are born and often do poorly in nature because they don't have the camouflage that their brethren have to help them survive.
Yeah, there's the other thing that he raises islands for his people or people who suffer from his brethren or persecution of sorts, so they can live safely. I wonder if this may be an allusion to Zodiac and the floating islands, because we've seen a floaty island with Amoratin things in the artwork from Walker, and there's the moon, of course. So also Bismarck being white reminds me of Elidibus.
Perhaps, yeah.
All right. Shall we move on to everyone's favorite primal of Heaven's Ward?
Yes.
The fourfold master of the blade.
High on
I am invincible.
Furious as a blaze.
Rejoice in the glory of combat.
Very quotable.
Not nearly as quotable as Susano.
Yes.
Even
Both
so,
excellent
very
fights
quotable.
with excellent music.
Yeah, very quotable,
Yes.
very dancey. Like it has that really well timed musical score.
Yes. These are Susano and Ravana are two primals that I would love to see going to take a drink.
It's also worth mentioning that Ravana is an original to Final Fantasy XIV, not an export from previous game. Obviously, summoned creatures have been a big deal in a lot of Final Fantasy, so it's been it's sort of cool having a unique one. Is Susano also unique? I can't remember.
Susano is unique too.
I thought so.
Yeah, I think they've been trying.
The only equivalent you may find relating somewhat to Final Fantasy is Bravely Default where he's a summon.
I get the sense that they're definitely trying over time to leave their own mark in terms of summons on the game, and that Susano and Ravana kind of encapsulate that.
And trust me, I have some things to say about Susano.
Oh yeah, we'll get there.
So,
Maybe next
Ravana,
week.
Yep.
Wrath of the colony and the god and savior of the Nath tribe, a proud warrior and conqueror, Lord Ravana exalts strength and abhors weakness in any form. Believing the right of combat to be sacred, he revels in battle with worthy opponents while wielding the Chandrahas?
Probably Chandrahas, but yeah.
Chandrahas?
I don't really know.
Legendary blades of moonlight that obey his every command. It is said that the Nath called forth this deity of war to annihilate the dragons, their racial enemy, and begin a new campaign to expand the borders of their territory. Bugs need a new home, yo.
It's interesting that they're in conflict with the dragons, presumably because that's where the dragons settled. And they were like, "Oh, we lived here. Why you take our land?" Well, the dragons had to live somewhere. Damn,
we
no
go-
one wants to take in
No,
refugees.
Blades of Moonlight.
Yeah, I commented on that in chat, which is intriguing.
Well, he spawns moths as well, which are kind of moon element
Yeah,
kind of
they're called
aspected
like
creatures.
Ghana or whatever. I forget now.
Yeah, and of course,
Yes.
Luna moths.
He calls them
are-
the souls of the fallen warriors too.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Origin myth. Oh dear. Though scholars are eager to research the society and religion of the Nath, repeated attempts to interact with the hostile One Mind have yielded little insight. As such, the manner in which the Nath themselves perceive Ravana's existence is poorly understood. One theologian writes, what's that?
Hive.
A hive of shared consciousness, instinctively, oh my gosh, aspires to an image of singular perfection, and it is likely that this ideal is seen projected onto the incarnation of their deity. Ravana is an invincible warrior god, his 4 shining blades slicing through dragon scale with contemptuous ease as he soars freely through the air on glittering wings. What more perfect ideal could the Nath ask for to champion the defense and expansion of their territory? So they don't even know for sure what the deal is. They're just making an educated guess. Interesting.
Yep.
It does make sense.
I mean, he's a super muscular, four-armed bug samurai, like
with a great voice.
With a great voice, and the Mongolian throat singing, and the glimmering wings. I loved this boss.
He's a great, fantastic design. They went for an original. I feel like they knocked it out of the park.
I think Ravana is probably not as much as a deity, but probably a manifestation of the One Mind, of what is the hive.
Well, again, like they say, they're aiming for they're aiming for some sort of perfection, especially when it comes to the thing that they want, which is battle against the dragons, so that they can expand their territory. It's also interesting. It's also interesting because we don't have any other sentient, self-aware beast tribes other than the One Mind that are indeed a hive. That's an unusual kind of thing.
Yes, the One Mind by itself is a really interesting concept to have, since kind of you could say it's like, well, I will have to quote other things. I will tell you later on the chat. I mean, on the server. Sorry. It's just that it's kind of just to wit. It reminds me of the initial link between everyone that was the echo of a symphony. Sorry. But for bugs.
But for bugs.
Just the strange delay, but for bugs. I loved it. It's bug time, guys.
Shall we move on to Shiva now?
Shiva.
I know Bahamut's next, but we'll get to him. Kind of want to do him before the Warring Triad because they kind of go hand in hand. Keep going down. It's a little ways down.
Ah, there we go. Oh, by the way, there's a little clip of Azdaja right there.
Yep.
Sidebar, but here's our dragons, in case anybody wanted to see them.
Always want to see dragons.
Dragons are real winners.
Vritra, Midgard-Sormr, Tiamat, Bahamut, Ratatoskr, Nidhogg, and Azdaja.
So Vritra was there with the long nose. So Azdaja.
Yep. There's Vritra right there with the long nose at the top.
Azdaja looks almost bird-like.
Azdaja looks very much more Ixali. Kind of a bird dragon.
Kind of
Very
reminds
interesting.
me a
could-
little bit of like a feathered serpent from like Mesoamerican mythology.
Quetzalcoatlus
Yeah.
Maybe as Daja lives in the
tied
new
to the
world.
sun.
That can be a
Perhaps we
discussion
find
for
out.
another day.
Indeed.
Yeah. I got some ideas about that, but yeah.
Like a dragons / Omega segment.
That would be a really good show.
Who wants this?
I do that one, even with my atrocious pronunciation.
Please, you have the floor.
Okay, Shiva. This first rhyme entity was called forth by Ishgardian heretics with their leader, Lady Iceheart, providing the corporeal vessel into which the spirit of Saint Shiva was imbued. As the first confirmed instance of Primal possessing a mortal host, the ceremony was an act of far-reaching political significance that risked supplying the Guardians with further justification for the invasion of Eorzea. Shiva lived 1,000 years ago, an ordinary woman of extraordinary passion, who nevertheless lacked the divine nature with which she was later attributed. The deity summoned by the heretics was not the saint herself, but the result of their fanatical worship of her glorified soul, the object of their veneration given primal form. Like most Ishgardians, Isel and her followers were raised on the stories of Halone, the mover of glaciers, and it is theorized that many aspects of the war goddess became entwined with their vision of Shiva and her aspected majesty.
It sucks that we don't get an origin or myth on this, but I suppose this will have to suffice. It does give really good background on who Shiva is and what she was.
I'm very brokenhearted at not having to try and read it. In seriousness, though, it's very interesting to me that she believes that she had the same soul, and we find out later from Hresfelger that that's not the case. That his beloved soul is still with him.
So,
But
yes,
But the Haloni thing is also very interesting because Shiva in the fight wields several different weapons, one at various times.
yeah. She actually uses a sword and as
She uses a sword, a
Halone-
bow, a
Staff.
staff,
staff,
something else, right?
the shield.
And a
Shield,
shield.
yeah.
That's right. I knew there was a fourth one, but I didn't think it was a weapon. That's right.
I don't recall actually. I think
I think it's just
Halone
3 sets.
yeah, it's just 3 sets. But it's kind of interesting because Halone is portrayed with the spear and the hopelon. I mean the shield. Just for, it's a hopelon, but it's a Greek shield. The round shield. So yeah, it's kind of curious that
But she wouldn't be much of a deity of war if she could only use one weapon, in my opinion.
yeah, fair enough. But in a sense, I would say that with this, it's kind of like Isel someone much more of a Halone construct than a Shiva construct.
There's a certain irony there, don't you think?
Yes.
Well, somewhat, yes. I mean, the image we have of Saint Shiva is hooded in a robe. You might get the staff from this as well as the ice element, and then the rest of it's very Halone.
Yeah. But yeah, the Shiva thing, the Nabrialis reporting back to La Habrea that apparently it worked and Uzea was able to walk away after catching her breath, is very, very interesting once we start finding out about how Zodiark was summoned.
Yes.
That's right. Yes.
And
then-
about how Xenos hopped in and controlled Shinri.
Also, a holder of the Blessing of Light, using primal powers, may offer
Queen
protection.
Bonilder too. And
Oh.
and well, that with the difference that Yotsuyu didn't have the Blessing of Light or the Echo, Tsukuyomi as well.
That's correct.
And same for
Mhm.
Thornton and the Bishop.
Yeah, Thordan and Tsukiyomi had to rely on outside implements to bring about their transformation. She was able to embody the idea all on her own.
We're not
Like-
sure if they would have survived or been intact or mentally, physically. However,
Right.
Because they immediately died, so it's kind of like, well, I guess we can't do
Yeah,
science here.
we can't really do science when they die.
Not just
Just like-
died, but also fully dissipated, like a primal does, rather than.
Well,
You know,
as I
Something
recall,
like-
Yatsu's body was still there after the little
Yeah.
soul blob left.
she
Yes.
fades.
No.
Does she
She
not?
doesn't fade. When she dies,
She loses the fancy colors, and she's lying
Yes.
there. Like I was saying, I'm not sure about Thornton. However, I don't recall that.
He
he.
slumps to the ground, and I don't know if I remember him disintegrating.
I think he does dissipate. Yes.
Yes, he does.
This is all very fuzzy. I'm having
So
fuzzy
let's move
thoughts.
on to actual Thornton.
Yeah.
Which is right below Shiva. I'll do this one. After years of nurturing the deification of Ishgard's founding father, Archbishop Thornton VII succeeded in infusing his own form with the soul of King Thornton. The ritual used to imbue the Archbishop's mortal vessel with the divine essence of his ancestor followed the same principle as that employed by Isael and her summoning of Saint Shiva, a rite previously perfected with the Heaven's Ward and their primal incarnations as the legendary Knights 12. Drawing upon the incalculable might of one of Nidhogg's eyes and bolstered by 1,000 years of unquestioning faith, the manifestation of King Thornton far exceeded the power of any existing primal. But driven by his monumental ambitions, the Archbishop sought to absorb the infinite energies of the warring triad and thus ascend to true divinity. As an eternal god king, Thornton meant to convert all to his cause, be they man or dragon, and bless the world with an unending age of harmony.
Listen, I'm sorry. I just when I say that the Sundering conflict is the Dragon Song War 0.5, I mean.
It really, really is. It's a storytelling device that they use a lot and they use well, where little things will stand in for bigger things, or a minor thing will have a theme, and that theme will echo larger too.
You're seeing that in your replay of Shadowbringers, aren't you?
Oh yeah. I also find it very interesting here that it says they succeeded in infusing his own form with that soul of King Thornton. I wonder if, because again, this is the lore book is written from the perspective of Charlian scholars. They might be wrong, they might be right. I would be very interested to know, especially since Yazael's own summoning did not truly, as far as we know, steal Saint Shiva's soul from Hresvelgr, who's holding on to it.
I think it's a manner of speaking. It wasn't
Yeah.
exactly King Thornton. I
Yeah.
don't actually think he. I mean.
I would really love to know if they're going to give us a true answer. This would be, in the absence of other information, I would assume this is correct, but there's always that caveat of maybe. It's also worth mentioning and noticing here, the ward was indeed, they'd become primals. They were tempered. So that's why they were behaving the way they were, all crazy.
So here's the thing. And this is from the Charlene perspective too, but there is also evidence to suggest in the game that they rather were not tempered but blessed.
Yes.
It affected
and
their minds, though.
Yes.
They followed him
and-
without question, and they had the blessing of Thornton, which was enough to turn them into a partial god, a partial version of a primal. Just a
It's
Go
also
ahead.
very suspicious to me that they swelled up to right around ancient height.
Same time, it's said that they follow the same principle as employed by Isael and the summoning of Saint Shiva, which means, which to me echoes, pun not intended, what Vena and her Posey actually did with Zodiac. They took a blueprint and replicated it.
And they had the help of the Asians. We see at one point Elidibus and La Habrea standing by Bishop Thornton.
so
They had tested it and they passed it on.
the evidence to suggest this was Sir Grenau the Bull, the second boss whom you fight in the vault, the one with the giant axe. All of the Heaven's Ward had unquestioning faith towards King Thornton. Grenau the Bull, though, was known for being wild and very unpredictable. But at the same time, he could easily, and this is quoted in a source, I think it was like the Encyclopedia Eorzea number 2 or 1. I forget where I found it. If he fell out of line, the bishop needed only to quote unquote bless him in order to fully seal his loyalty.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you say unquestioning faith, I say really sounds like tempering. Again, we don't know exactly what the blessing of light entails. And my theory on this is that if you do not have the echo and you embody a primal, you're getting tempered to yourself. You're now tempered to that primal. That's my take. We don't know for sure exactly how it works, though.
I also wanted to cut in on the language here because it says that he successfully fused his soul with King Thordan. I honestly don't know how. Thordan was the king, not the son who took the eye. So, what's going on here?
Well, he's just using the faith that people have had for ages and ages, and then also the power of the eye. I think the sun is not irrelevant here, but not the object of veneration. So he didn't want that because he wanted the veneration, the power, the well of Ascalon or whatever he was talking about.
I guess what I'm trying to say is, whence does this soul come from? So I don't believe this text. I actually think it's unreliable.
I tend to agree with you. I'm also considering the possibility that since we know souls are reborn, it might be he's that same soul, and he just powered up. Who knows? Shrug. Just random theory.
Also, the fact that he used Haldrath, the first Assyrian dragoon that was fused with the other Eye of Nidhogg. He used that. He doesn't just take the eye out of Haldrath's corpse. He takes the whole corpse, the whole body of Haldrath to fuel the primal. So even if it's not the father, it has the essence of the son.
He's taking the physical remains of the individual's son, his blood relation, plus the power of the eye to fuel this summoning. So it's got like a direct connection.
Well, I'm pretty sure the sun had been corrupted by the eye. No, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but they'd basically been taken over in a manner similar to what we see with Estinian.
He didn't seem to really care about that, but
yeah, but I'm saying I consider them essentially one entity for that purpose.
That's
true. I would actually say that Haldrath makes Haldrath is what makes the sword of Thordan, Ascalon, because the sword has the eye embedded in it. So I would say that actually the sword of Thordan, I mean,
that sword is created from the body.
Ascalon has this shiny white thing, and Haldrath's armor is distinctly white too.
It's mithril white, yeah.
So he's kind of turned. Thordan has kind of turned his son into a blade.
But yeah, he literally he just puts his hand over it and it evaporates and turns into a blade, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Do we have any more thoughts on Thordan?
Last thing I'll say is that little look he gives us at the end, what are you? It probably means nothing, but it's kind of fun to speculate on.
Oh, I think it means everything.
It really does. Other than anything he might have been thinking, at least for the player, it gives them the sense of like, maybe you should start considering what you are, because you're doing things that are just like insane if you really sit down and think about them, and you're achieving them, and it's just like, what does that mean about you? What does that reflect on about you?
Yeah.
I also find this striking because obviously this is the MSQ fight for Heavensward, but then Stormblood rolls around and we get absolutely stomped by a non-echo badass, which implies that our powers are very potent against primal entities, but we're absolutely not unstoppable, and somebody who's just really good at fighting can absolutely wipe the floor with us. at that point in the story.
Agreed.
You put in the chat, Ayumi is really interesting in the sense that if we're going by parallels, the father figure is like forbidden in the in pre
This
pre
was
our,
taken from the
our
book, by the way.
arrival. Yeah, I mean, I've rambled a lot about the father figure in Final Fantasy XIV and how it is a constant because Zodiac 2 is the father figure, and but we are hammered everywhere about the mother figure, but with Heidelin. And I actually appreciate, like I said, their take on the father figure because sometimes it's really overlooked and doesn't have and you know I don't know, and it's usually very misinterpreted.
Yeah. I believe we can fit in one more primal before we have to call it a week. So, which
That
one do
is
we
true.
want, Phoenix or Odin?
Ooh,
Ooh, community vote.
Tough one. That's a tough one.
I'm neutral.
Okay. Chat, who do you want us to talk about, Phoenix or Odin?
I'm pretty sure there was an
Like
entry
me.
on one of the nights that was like, yeah, he's really popular with the ladies even though he's supposed to be celibate. So at least one of them probably not.
Yeah,
Let's do Odin. Odin's
We're
interesting.
doing Odin.
Odin.
The single. Thanks, Blink.
We're
You
doing
got
Odin.
one vote, guys. One vote.
Phoenix.
Bye, Phoenix.
Sorry, we can
Someone
talk about
seems
Phoenix with
depressed.
Bahamut next week.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Perfect.
Who wants this one?
Me?
I can read. Oh, if you want to go for it.
No, I don't mind.
Let's spread the love. Someone else read. Who hasn't read?
Core?
I don't have a lore book, unfortunately.
Can you?
Oh, it's right on the stream.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been reading it from the stream, which is why I've been struggling with some of the words.
Same.
It's okay. It's okay.
Fao, maybe you can read it with your awesome voice.
Radio voice.
Odin.
Here, I'll take a crack at it.
Excellent.
A primal entity of enigmatic origin, Odin wanders the paths of the Black Shroud astride his great steed Schleipnir. I hope I pronounced that right. With the murder of Lady Earth, the foremost among his long list of vile deeds, ancient scriptures paint the dark divinity as a demonic villain that appeared during the reign of the Allagan Empire. The being who now stalks the Gridanian forests has done little to dispel that notion, cleaving in twain all that venture within reach of his sorcerous blade. There are those, however, who claim that it is the search for Lady Earth, and not a taste for slaughter, which drives Odin in his endless hunt. A careful study by Seedseer Oap Pessi and others has revealed that the sword itself, the Zenitsuken, is the primal's true vessel, and by enthralling whoever takes up its hilt is a dark divinity reborn time and time again. Prominent theologians have begun to advocate the idea that the blade was, in fact, the primal champion of Earth's followers, a weapon imbued with godly strength that it might strike off the fetters of the Allagan's tyranny.
I just want to say that I was once Odin for a week.
Hooray! That was this year, wasn't it?
Yep.
A buddy of mine was once when we did it.
For those who are in chat and may not know, Odin, the world boss that spawns in the Realm Reborn zones, the last person to deal damage becomes the new body of Odin, the following spawn. So if you ever kill Odin, legit get the last hit, it'll be your avatar next week.
Just save your cooldowns and crit for the last hit.
It's interesting that they chose Odin for the ending of 5.55 because it's kind of they added the trail later, but it's not. It's part of pretty much a side quest. And then they added Odin into the final confrontation in the Curtain of Floods.
See, I find it interesting from the perspective of the other ones are elemental primals. It's like just get enough element and the right idea and you get that. But who summoned elemental Odin? What? There is no beast tribe that venerates Odin that I know of. So who were they shoving in that tower to get that out?
This is part of the Eureka quest line, actually. You do not fight Odin
Yes.
in Baldesion Arsenal, but you do fight Raiden. You may know
Right.
from other FF games, there's always
yes.
a bossy or boss version of Odin somewhere.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up. I feel like Odin has a lot of connections to Eureka, not least of which the primal Eureka itself and its creation of weapons could have an origin point for Zenitsuken.
Yeah, I think the Zentetsuken came from the Eureka facility and just at some point made its way to the Greenwood.
I read something about the Santetsuken being named.
FBI's coming.
Having. I live next to two hospitals. I mean, the Santetsuken. I think I recall that there was a file or something that said that it has a Far Eastern origin because the first wielder was an Ori warrior that came from the Far East, and he was the first Odin. So yeah, it's kind of.
I like how the sword is Odin, is the true vessel, and not the rider.
I'm just wondering if Fandaniel nicked the sword after some, fate or whatever, and that's how we got Lunar Odin, or did they replicate it? Like, how do you get another Odin? That's the thing I'm
This
sitting
is
here wondering.
curious. This aspect is curious. It almost strikes me as a whoops.
Do you
but it's hard to say.
do you just
Honest.
do you just instead of people you just chunk a lot of weapons inside the Telo Tower and they make Odin?
Hey, maybe that's what he did with all the ones that Xenos didn't pick.
I mean, look at Delubrum Regine. Look at all those weapons that were used.
Indeed.
Yeah. On this subject, I haven't mentioned, and you guys may actually know this, but when you beat Raiden in Baldesion Arsenal, you get a white version of the Zentetsuken, and it's named.
Yes.
It's named that way as well. I'm trying to remember what the prefix is. Is it Zan?
Shin.
It's Shin. Shin Zentetsuken. So the death version of Shin as in Shine, I guess.
It's interesting because it's white because the color white in Japan represents death.
Right.
I was about to bring that up. High five.
Yeah, high five.
I always bring that up in relation to Elidibus and his robes.
And Heidelin.
I want to bring up Blinkbright's question really quickly. Is it inconceivable that two of the same primal can be summoned? It's not done in practice, but do we have lore as to why it can't happen? My understanding is that the Warring Triad were summoned repeatedly until they got nice strong versions and then imprisoned, so they couldn't be summoned anymore, but I could be wrong. I don't believe you can have doubles with summoning.
Like you could have two Ifrits at the same time.
But these are the lunar primals who.
I'm assuming the rules are. Yeah,
I don't even know if we can actually call them primals.
Yeah, I'm assuming the rules are different for lunar primals, but I just don't know.
Like lunar behemoth is actually labeled a telotherium as epithet in Pagelfan. So technically, we call them lunar primals because that's what Daniel pretty much kind of have a name.
Yeah.
But the proper epithet is telotherium, which actually means beast of the end.
In German, they I think it was German. Yeah, they use the term dark primal for them.
Kind of get the sense that because primals are heavily implied to have origins as concepts, like very complicated concepts from the ancient era, that potentially because of their origin as a concept, like a very distinct entity, they could only exist in the world in that one instance because of that specificity. And so when you see a dark version of them, a lunar primal, it's something that's close but not quite the same. It's a twisting of the original concept.
It's also probably relevant to the summoner quests where you summon Aegis, which are like dumbed down, very carefully managed versions that cannot temper or disobey your will, basically.
They lack sapience.
Do you remember Belaya Seji? That
I always remember Belaya Segi. I'm still waiting for answers for that, and I'm probably never going to get them.
That's yeah.
Okay, so that's actually a good thing to bring up because Belias Iggy was shaped like Ifrit Iggy, but large and purple. Ha. Okay, interesting. Maybe we will get more on it.
And Belias is one of the Lucavi, the fire Lucavi.
Correct.
This is gonna be all stuff that we see in Endwalkers. It's just gonna come up and sneak up on us. It's these little lore bits.
Myself.
It's just like, oh hey, check out Elias Eggy here in Charland.
Oh god.
Be like, oh yeah, we got a library full of eggies. We want whatever flavor you want.
We got the Sephiroth eggy. We got the Sophia eggy. Take whichever flavor you want.
Zervon Eggy is my personal favorite.
Did you have to choose the Sophia Eggy just as and couple that with choose the flavor?
Or
because...
if Charland's
do you want top or bottom?
If they'll probably be like, hey, Warrior of Light, we've been watching your exploits very carefully and making eggies based on the primals you found. Do you want a Shiva eggy?
I mean, if Martin can use Quasar from Sophia, I mean, what else?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
You can do all sorts of things with it. Honestly, it's pretty cool.
So
I mean, go Martin, but it's like, what the fuck? Where the fuck did you learn that?
I think that about does it for this week. We'll carry, since we didn't get through too many. We did go quite a bit through, at least the Realm Reborn ones and into Heaven's Ward, but there's a lot of primals. There's a lot of primals. So
there's
we're
also a lot.
And some others that aren't primal.
That's what I was gonna say. There's also a lot that people assume are primals that are not.
Yes.
I can't wait. So we'll
we'll continue this into next
right?
week. Yep, we'll continue into next week and in the week following if we still can't go through them. So consider this a 2, maybe even 3-parter. We'll see.
We've got a lot to cover.
Yes, it's a long road.
And a lot of room to discuss for this week in the server.
Yes.
Look to the stars, for you are a traveler, are you not?
All right, you.
Yes.
You.
Absolute pleasure this week, guys. Thank you for hanging out with us. We are intending to discuss the difference between primals and icons, and as well as go into the
the auspices.
There we go. The
Auspices,
auspices.
there you go.
So there's more to talk about, and we'll be back next week. Thank you for joining us. Please show up next week and bring your friends.
Yep. Same time, same place. We have our Discord, which can we go ahead and link that in the chat as well?
We absolutely can. Let me.
Yeah, follow us on Discord and join our Discord if you'd like. Follow us on Twitter. There's absolutely no way we're getting a Facebook, so don't even try asking.
Anyone who hasn't joined the Discord yet, it's not just us talking about our ideas. We welcome discussion. We welcome ideas from everybody.
Tons of tinfoil hats.
And you'll probably see some of us in game. We go by. You can probably find our first names and our last names in game. But most of us.
Except me, because I'm the only European here.
Oh,
yes.
There might be Europeans here. Don't lose heart. All right, I'll close out the stream. Thank you guys for joining.
Don't lose heart, like so.
See you next week.
Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
See you.